I remember days they used to laugh at me. Used to show them on my records talking casually. Used to say it was a passion on my path to be. Then they told me that I couldn't, so I had to be. Tell me what they really think about it now. Used to hate it, but I guarantee they're proud. Had to do it just to show them that I could, yeah. Now I finally think I took it where I should, yeah. I had jokes on you and now you're on and laughing. I did a whole lot of winning. Look, it came from a passion. I see a whole lot of knowings. I could see now in public and that may think a lot of things. Man, at least think something, now you the judge. Hey, now tell me where you ended up. Yeah. Look, I bet it was a simple job. Yeah. Look, I went and took a different route. Yeah. Look, that's why my life is different now. Back in my feelings, look, when I wasn't so gifted and I was learning to do this, and all I heard were the critics, and I don't blame you for that shit. Look, I was way out the basis, but I just needed some talent so I could wait this to greatness. Oh yeah, you ain't ever think this, no, no, no. Stop me while I started, homie, whoa, whoa, whoa. Now this shit settled, it's go better and better, but I'll always remember, yeah, yeah.
Yo, we're back. That1 Podcast in Austin at the OWN headquarters. Go check out OWN, new social media platform. You're going to want to get your username locked in. Go check it out right now. Go.
That's right. What's your username?
Mikey C-Roc. And yours?
McKinsey. Just one.
Wow. How did you do that?
Mic drop.
Go get your username. All right, we're here with Dr. Corey DeAngelis. I was excited to meet him. I've seen him on television before. You may have as well, talking about education. And he's got a new book out, Kinz.
Yes, I mean, I want to Vanna White this. This is amazing. And I just noticed, thank you so much. I got a little note. This thing has been endorsed by some bigwigs. Thank you for being here. So, okay, who has endorsed this book besides obviously Mikey and myself?
President Trump, Ted Cruz from Texas. He's from my home state. He says on the back, you can ruin Randy Weingarten's day by reading this book. That's the head of the teachers union. And I'm sorry if you can't read in the beginning the note I put to you. It's in horrible handwriting. I went to government school, so you can't blame me. But if I had school choice, maybe I'd have better handwriting when I grew up. But yeah, and if you can call me doctor if you want, but the reality is, Mike, I'm not a real doctor. I'm more like a Jill Biden doctor. I have a PhD in education policy. I can't help you with the hard stuff, but.
I know. Well, his beautiful wife, you can't see. She's off to the side here, and we asked if she also calls you doctor.
Yes, when the lights are off.
Can we start? Let's start personal, because this is personal to everyone. So your lovely wife, congratulations, by the way. Tell us about your baby girl.
Yeah, we have a 7-month-old baby girl. She's in the hotel right now with Grandma, and our baby girl's name is Angelina. Her first name is basically the same as the last name. It's Angelina DeAngelis, which means angel of the angels. So it was very fitting to make it twice. She's our little angel, our baby girl. And my wife and I, we met over Facebook, actually. Over a decade ago, we had already been connected on Facebook.
Okay.
But we had not talked before. And then in 2022, I saw that she had posted a running picture, an 18-mile run. And she had posted about prepping for the San Antonio Marathon. And I figured, well, I've done that before, and maybe we could talk about this. And so I messaged her, and thankfully she messaged back. And 5 weeks after we met in person, I ended up proposing to her at the end of at the same race. So
5 weeks.
And then like 6 months later, we eloped. And then a few months after that, we had our formal wedding ceremony. And now we have a baby girl. So we moved fast. When you know, you know.
You don't mess around, my man.
That's
I like
right.
that. What's the best part of fatherhood?
Just playing with baby Angelina, and just seeing her and her mom interact. And she's 50% her mom and 50% me. It's a beautiful thing. And
she's a stunning little baby.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, congratulations. I just love that you proposed 5 weeks.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
There's different ways to find your one. Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys have watched Love is Blind at all, but like my wife and I get caught up in that. I've been married 22 years and we watch Love is Blind.
They're the cutest. They have their shows and they cuddle up.
Yeah. We do that every night. And
I love love. So
Love is Blind, they have a wall in between the people, and you basically get an emotional connection through conversation, communication. And it works for some of them, and others it doesn't, because then at the end they have a reveal. Kinz, you said it wouldn't work for you?
I've seen the show. Some of my friends, including my stylist, were like, Kinz, you should go on the show. You should go on the show. No, I love it, but I don't think it's for me.
I agree with Kinz. I think you have to have like the intellectual spark has to be there. The emotional spark has to be there. You have to be interested in what they're interested to a certain extent. But I think also you have to have that physical chemistry and attraction
Yes.
as well. And
Yes.
so we were talking to each other on WhatsApp video every night, so we kind of had that already.
You felt
but
the
I
vibe,
remember
the
she asked
energy.
me, "Do you think I'm going to be too short for you?" She's significantly shorter than I am, but not too much. And I've said, no, actually, I'm attracted to that. That's a turn on for me, actually, if anything. And then we saw each other in person, and you still don't know, even after seeing each other on video, you don't know if it's going to be the same in person, but
Right.
it only elevated the experience.
Because
And
it's that energy, right?
Yes.
That vibe. But I know what you're saying, Mike. Because Mike is like, you should go to the show. And he's like, oh, you only like good-looking dudes.
well, I noticed something about Mike before we got on. He has the same kind of ring as me, where we have a little bit bling bling.
Oh, these dudes. So men like a little bling-bling on their wedding rings?
I
didn't
do.
know.
It wasn't my choice, though. Miranda, my wife, actually said, you speak on stage too much, and I got to make sure that the women at the back of the room can see that you have a ring.
Yes, queen.
And
I love
so,
that. Okay.
Yeah, when she first visited me, I was living in D.C. at the time, which was horrible for lockdowns and everything. She was living in Texas. We both grew up in the San Antonio area.
Mm-hmm.
And she kind of shoved me into the Jared while we were shopping at the mall, and that's where we picked out the ring. That was
I love
less
it.
than 5 weeks. after
But you,
meeting, so.
5 weeks, that's incredible. I mean, some ladies have been waiting years for that, and
Yeah.
they never get it.
Now you're known for talking about education and freedom of education, and I
Yes.
want to know, like, how the heck did that all start for you? Like, from a young age, did you just realize like something's wrong here in the school system, or where did that all start?
Yeah, I got into this as an economist. I did my bachelor's and master's in economics at the University of Texas at San Antonio, where I grew up. And when you learn the economic way of thinking, you see that monopolies are a huge problem. That if the buyer has no ability to take their money somewhere else, the producer is going to give you a low quality product. If they don't have to compete, they're going to cost a lot of money. I mean, just imagine if you were assigned to a grocery store just based on where you lived. And if you wanted to get something else, if they were selling expired food, if half the time the shelves were empty and you wanted something else and you had to get up and move houses to go somewhere else, that would make zero sense. They'd have
Right.
no incentive to do a better job. They would say, just give us more money. We promise we'll do better next time. It's the definition of insanity. That's what we see with the school system today, where you're assigned to a school based on where you live. And if they're doing a poor job, if they're failing the mark on math, reading, and writing, or if they're indoctrinating your kid with values that aren't aligned with your own, and you have to get up and move houses, they don't care if you're upset. If you go to the school board meeting, we've seen parents have their mics cut off. We saw that the last administration had the FBI create a threat tag for parents, calling them domestic terrorists for showing up in school board meetings because they disagreed with the curriculum. And so when you have school choice, when the money follows the child, that changes that dynamic 180. Now the parents are in control. And so when the school board or the school's not listening to them, they can take their money somewhere else. And then the ears perk up at the public school administrators, and they do better. The competition's a rising tide that lifts all boats. And after my bachelor's and master's, real quick, I did a PhD in education policy at the University of Arkansas. And there I did a lot of my initial research on the subject. My first study linked a school choice program in Milwaukee, started in 1990, to a long-term outcome, which was a reduction in crime over time. A lot of researchers look at things like test scores. I was more interested in things like mental health, whether you're an engaged, active citizen, whether you're not getting involved with the criminal justice system. And so that was a groundbreaking study. I thought I was going to go into academia for a while to study these kinds of programs. I figured out that 99% of the people in the higher education institutions were not aligned with me on this subject. And so I went into think tanks, and now I'm still doing my same advocacy I've been doing all along, doing some research from here to there. But we're finally winning on the issue. We're winning so much I'm almost getting tired of winning. But we're not done yet.
love
We're on the way.
So you have such a oh god, we can we're getting notes from the back. You have such a beautiful mind. Did you always did you know that like you would be an advocate, or what was the moment when you're like, okay, I'm going to make a difference, and now you're sick of winning?
Yeah, I mean, I knew this. I mean, when I was in high school, I had the opportunity to go to something called a magnet school. So I went to government schools, K through 12, but in Texas and some other states, you have magnet schools where you're not assigned to them. They have an incentive to listen to you because they have to attract their clientele in a way. They're competing in an open market in a sense. And I felt like that was a good opportunity for me. I think other families should have educational opportunities too. And so that kind of was an early on experience that has been ingrained into my brain. But I think I really hit it off once I started that PhD program and saw the real life impacts of these programs on children, and then just connecting that dot with what I was learning during my bachelor's and master's as well. And then, I got onto social media after doing the kind of academic work, and I started to realize that you can reach more people in a 140 character tweet than you could with a 50-page research article that not even the peer reviewers were actually read it half the time. And so I figured I could make more impact through social media, through taking this information directly to the people instead of in the ivory tower where no one really cares about the things that you're doing. So once I got into social media, fighting with the teachers unions, fighting with people like Randy Weingarten who make over $500,000 a year, trying to trap kids in her failure factories, that just once I learned who my enemy was, there was no going back.
Now let's talk about school choice for a second. So I understand this. It would be someone can select whatever school district they want to go to, number one. And if you do that, how do you avoid like a school being drained? Obviously, over time, the competition will step up, like you said, but there's a transition period of time, and there's only so much space in the quote-unquote good schools, right?
Yeah, so it's not just district to district. It's much more options than that. It could be the proposal right now in Texas. It's called an education savings account. So you could take the money that's allocated for your kid to the assigned government school. That's business as usual. Nothing really changes. In Texas, we spend about $17,000 per student per year in the government-run school. But if not, so if you like your public school, you can keep your public school. For real this time, unlike with your doctor. Obama told us we could keep our doctor. That actually didn't happen. But with your school, they actually do improve in response to competition. And if not, you can take a portion of that funding. The proposal in Texas is about $10,000 per student, and that would go into a savings account directed by the parent. You could use that for private school tuition. You could use it to go to a different school district if you'd like. You could use it for a charter school or a home-based education option too. Even micro schools are really popular in recent years, kind of like the reimagination of the one-room schoolhouse, having 10 children together in a household. You can basically economize on the process of homeschooling, make it more feasible. But that's not $17,000. It's only $10,000 following the kids. So the school that you're assigned to gets to keep thousands of dollars for students who are no longer there. To go back to the grocery store analogy, just imagine if you stopped shopping at Walmart, and since we're in Texas, if you wanted to go to H-E-B, it's a popular grocery store here. Imagine if Walmart got to keep half of your grocery funding each week. They'd be happy about that.
Of course.
I argue the public school should be happy they get to keep any money at all for students they're no longer educating. So that'll help them adjust with this transition period. And at the end of the day, we shouldn't be concerned so much about the buildings. We should be concerned about the kids, and that shouldn't be an argument to trap these kids in those schools any longer. They've already been waiting for decades. You have some families where they went to a failing school, their kids went to that same failing school, now their grandkids are going to that same school district, and they keep telling them over and over again, just wait a little longer, give us a little bit more money, we'll do better next time, we promise. Parents are sick of hearing that, and so they need to be able to vote with their feet, go somewhere else if that's the best option for them. And I will say, because of competition, if you get that choice, it's almost counterintuitive. You'll be less likely to have to use that choice, because now if you're going to listen to me, maybe I won't have to leave. Maybe I'll stay put, because if you're going to start teaching the basics, if you're going to get all the gender ideology out of the classroom, the critical race theory out of the classroom, now I'm going to be happy with what I got already. And so increasing the ability to choose reduces the likelihood you will need to exit and choose an alternative option.
Now, I have to know, what is the key to change? You're getting stuff done because people want to bicker and argue, and you have this point and I have this point, but how are you pushing through because you're making it happen? Yeah,
like I said, we're winning so much, I'm almost getting tired of winning.
Yeah.
And
I love it.
We haven't gone to the blue states yet, though.
Right.
So, look, we Texas is going to be next. New Hampshire just passed a bill today out of their house easily for universal school choice. 3 states this year went all in on school choice already: Tennessee, Idaho, Wyoming. In total, in the past 4 years, we've had 15 red states go all in on school choice. Every single family, regardless of income, background, zip code, they can take their child's education dollars to the school that works best for them. So Milton Friedman's vision of universal education freedom is finally coming to fruition right before our very eyes. And some people give me a lot of credit, but I actually dedicated the book to Randi Weingarten herself. She is the head of the teachers union, the head of the American Federation of Teachers. She lobbied the CDC to make it more difficult to reopen schools during COVID, fear-mongering every step of the way. They held children's education hostage. And I thanked her for inadvertently doing more to advance school choice and homeschooling than anyone could have ever imagined. And I say that because parents got to see what was happening in the schools. We had Zoom school, which was a total failure.
Yeah.
The remote learning was more like remotely learning. There wasn't a lot of learning going on. But families saw that the schools were focused more on indoctrination than education. And as Vodi Bakum once famously said, we cannot continue to send our children to Caesar for their education and be surprised when they come home as Romans. The parents aren't surprised anymore. They've woken up. They're going to the school board meetings. They're going to the Capitol. They're making their voices heard. And now we've had so much mobilization like we've never seen before. We've had more advancement on the issue of school choice in the past 4 years than in the preceding 4 decades.
Incredible.
So it's a lot. It's a lot of winning.
Mm-hmm. That's a lot of winning.
So my son was a straight A student, and when COVID came around, the homeschooling came, obviously it was all remote learning, and his grades were like, it was crazy. And he's an intelligent kid. He just I don't think they could adjust effectively. There was problems there for sure. So one of the things that has made me successful in life, and just in life in general, I'm not talking about just business-wise, but is being able to take a perspective of like an omni perspective, or like pan perspective, like looking over everything, right? Both sides, looking at the game from above, right? So what would you say? Let's say you were trying to argue the other side. I want to hear how they're trying to justify this, or are they just evil people, which a lot of people think, right? Yeah. Right? But like, what is your thoughts on like try to argue their perspective, I guess?
Yeah, try to steel man their argument. You can't. It's all straw man because they don't have any. All their arguments are flimsy. But the main one they'll put forward is that you're going to defund our public schools. And a lot of people like their public schools, so it resonates to a certain extent. But my response is typically a rhetorical question. Why would giving families a choice defund your public schools if they're doing a good job? They know they're not doing a good job, so
Exactly.
they can't answer that question. They usually block me on social media right after that because they basically
does that
have
give
to
you a
say it's
little extra pep in your step because you know you're doing something if they're blocking you?
Exactly. Yeah. The Texas American Federation of Teachers already blocked me. The NEA, the largest teachers union in the country, already blocked me. And it's because their position is indefensible, and they're so concerned about the system and not the student. I've made a pretty famous catchphrase, which is fund students, not systems. We should fund the children, not the schools. I'm not arguing to defund anything. I want the money to go to the kid. Education funding is meant for educating children, not for propping up a particular institution. We should fund the child, not the school. We should fund the student, not the system. And a lot of states are starting to do that right now. And, the thing is, they basically have no confidence in their product. If that's their main argument, that our failure factories are going to be defunded and they're going to be destroyed, which has never happened. It's nothing but fear-mongering. The public schools have only gotten better. Look at Florida, for example. You live in Florida. Mm-hmm. In Florida, they have universal school choice. They're one of the first states to go all in. They've been a leader on the issue for a long time. But a couple decades ago, Florida was at the bottom of the pack on what we call the nation's report card, the national assessment for educational progress. Right. It looks at math scores, reading scores, and so on and so forth. And they were at the bottom of the pack. Fast forward to today, as they've expanded school choice to all families, they now have over 500,000 kids on scholarships in Florida at the K-12 level. And now they're ranked number 1 by U.S. News & World Report for education. And it's not because they spend a lot of money either. They spend 27% less than the national average in Florida. So it's not a money issue. It's an incentive issue. The public schools have gotten better in Florida. Families have more choices. These things aren't mutually exclusive. You can have more freedom and flexibility on the part of the parent and more customization. And you can also have a great public school system because they have to actually listen to their customers, the parents.
It's a win-win. And he's sick of winning.
Almost. One thing about this is, though, if you think about this, right, the teachers union is to protect what?
The status quo. And it's not even the teachers. It's not even the teachers. Yeah. If they're not a kids union, they definitely don't look out for the kids.
Yeah.
But if you look at where their money goes, over time, this is true in Texas, it's true nationwide too. And nationwide, since 1970, per student spending in the public school system has increased by 164% after adjusting for inflation. Teacher salaries, even though we have a lot of teachers unions, have only gone up by 3% in real terms over the same period. Where's all the money going? It's going towards administrative bloat. It's not going in the classroom. It's not going towards the kids or the teachers. We have data on this since 2000 in America. The student enrollment since 2000 has been relatively flat. It's gone up by about 5%. The number of teachers in the system has increased by about 10%. But the number of administrators in the system has increased by 95%. It's become a jobs program for administrators, not an education initiative for kids. And the other issue here, why you have so many Democrats voting against school choice, even though their constituents support it in large numbers, the Democrat politicians, they're a wholly owned subsidiary of the teachers union. Randy Weingarten's union, 99.9% of her campaign contributions, you look it up on Open Secrets, they show this every election cycle, 99.9% of that money goes to the Democrats every single election cycle. It's a money laundering operation. It ought to be illegal, but that's the only reason why you have Democrats, one party almost unanimously votes against school choice, whereas the Republicans tend to vote for it. I hope it'll become more bipartisan going forward. You look at the latest polling from Texas. They find supermajority support overall for the proposal for education savings accounts. Republicans, Democrats, independents, majority support it. The lowest level of support, if you broke it down by race and by political party, was among white Democrats. And that still had 52% majority support. And that was the lowest subset of support. And that's a poll from the University of Houston. It's not like it was a biased, poll in favor of vouchers. It was a nonpartisan poll.
Corey, what's your ideal, your vision for your beautiful baby girl? Like when she enters into the school system, what ideally, after all your work and your passion, what do you want to see for her in particular?
The ideal is to not enter the school system. We're never going to stop. We're already homeschooling. Everybody homeschools when you have a kid. We are the first and foremost educators for our children, right? Mm-hmm. We're teaching them things on a day-to-day basis. They learn from us. We model for them, right? Yeah. And Angelina's learning fantastic traits from her beautiful mother. Yeah. And so we're going to try our best to make homeschooling work. But if not, micro schools seem like a really cool option too, so when the COVID school closures happened, it's a really interesting story of spontaneous order, which is an economic concept, a free market kind of idea that when the government's not providing something, people will voluntarily figure things out. And so even in places like San Francisco, they were creating these micro schools that they were calling pandemic pods. The blue states were closing the schools forever. The parents were like, we got to figure something out. They didn't know how to homeschool. This was like they were starting from scratch, and it was involuntary. It was forced upon them because they were otherwise relying on the public school system. Sure. But they figured it out by banding together with other parents. They created a Facebook group. There were tens of thousands of parents within a month just in the Bay Area trying to come up with solutions for their kids. And so you're basically getting 5 to 10 children together in a household. Okay. It's reimagining the one-room schoolhouse. And with these ESA, education savings accounts, school choice programs, you can use that funding for micro schools too. So the proposal in Texas is about $10,000 per kid. You could band together with 10 different families with 10 children. That's $100,000 right there, even without having to pay anything out of pocket. And you could pay a tutor. You could even have one parent do English, one parent do math. And homeschoolers are already doing this, but I see in the future, this is only going to be supercharged through these school choice efforts. And the NEA, the teachers unions, they're freaking out because they know the factory model of schooling is at risk right now. Yeah. They put an opposition research sheet together attacking Kelly Smith and Prenda Microschools. He was the founder, Kelly Smith. And they're very successful in Arizona right now and some other states like Florida, where they're already using education savings accounts to pay for these micro schools. Right. And during COVID, when the public schools were closed, they saw enormous increases in enrollment. And so the teachers unions put out a political hit piece against them. It leaked to one of the school choice supporters in the area, and we got it to the Wall Street Journal, who put out a headline they called it the teachers union's tiny little enemy. And they were referring to these micro schools being such a threat to the status quo. It's a really exciting time to be in education right now because, for a long time, we've just thought about public school or these brick and mortar private schools, but there's a whole different supply of education providers that are going to pop up in response to the money following the child.
So I homeschool my daughter. She's 12, and I took her out in May of last year because we were at a funeral, my wife and I, and my wife got a text that said, "Mom, they're going to jump me." And she was on the playground, and 13 girls were going to jump her, right? And so, it goes through your head as soon as you see that. You're like, oh, my gosh. We told her to go to an administrator right away. But, I was watching this school. My son went through that school, too, and it reminded me of a low-security prison, the way their kids were treated. At this particular school, not the whole school system in this district, but just this particular school. And I was just like, I started asking myself, why would I send my daughter to this place where she's got every morning she would get an upset stomach when she would go. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, you just got to push through. And I thought to myself, I'm going to make her tougher you doing this, but I don't want to make a tough kid.
Yeah.
I want to make a kind kid that can handle some things, I can be hard on her enough at home to
Did the
to make
school
it tough.
implement anything? Did you?
No, I just when we went there, we had the meeting and all that, and then it became a who's wrong type situation, and I was just like, that's enough. Now I'm not putting her in this. So I took her out right away, and as soon as I made that decision, I had a sense of relief, and I thought to myself, who's better to teach her than me?
Well, Corey, I was going to ask you, going on that theory and that thought, if somebody doesn't feel confident, we can learn from you all day. Your daughter is definitely in luck from you and your beautiful wife, but if someone doesn't feel confident that they can instill and they can do the lessons properly, they don't have the confidence to homeschool, what would you tell them, or what should they do?
You can, because look at what's happening in the government school system today. You have some public schools in Maryland and in Baltimore. They have 40% of their high schools have 0% math proficiency rate. So you can do better than the people in the government school system. Yeah. And if you don't feel like you're ready to make that leap right now, well, then, maybe look for other schools, like a private school that maybe it's a better opportunity. Or maybe you try something like hybrid homeschooling, which is just a couple days a week. A few days a week you go to an in-person, and then the other couple of days a week you're basically doing a homeschooling. So you can dip your toe and try it out. And look, during COVID, if you had school-age kids, everybody basically got a taste of homeschooling. Yeah. Some of it didn't work because it was the government schooling trying to be implemented at home, and that's not the right way to do it. And so I would recommend, reading my book, obviously, but there's another good one by Carrie McDonald, and she wrote one called Unschooled, talking about the whole unschooling movement. Okay. And she has a new one out called Joyful Learning, talking about all of these other options besides just brick and mortar private schools and public schools. Really looking into these founders of the micro schools and how they structure education too, I think is really interesting. And the prison analogy is an apt one, I would say. And I'd say schooling in a way is actually worse than prison because the children are only guilty of the crime of being the wrong age. Yeah. When you're in a prison, at least you committed a crime. The kids that haven't committed any crime, they're just the wrong age.
And now, so with social media and all the bullying, it's not just back in the day, you're on the playground, but it's people you see just everybody's online and talking about you sending pictures and all those things, and it's awful, especially for little girls in particular. Yeah. The devil's in it. Yeah.
Let me just say this. I probably gave my daughter her phone too early, and she doesn't have it now because she doesn't have the responsibility level, and you're really allowing evil into your home, into the kids' minds. And I saw some of the stuff that was going on in some of the chats and things, and I was just appalled. And I was pissed at myself, not at my daughter, but I was pissed at myself because I just didn't see it, I guess. And but yeah, so I can't even fathom her going back into the school system with the way the kids were talking now and what they're access to and the other parents are allowing their kids to be involved with. That's the thing that concerns me. Even if you get the right school, the kids are still there with parents that have different value systems.
Yeah, I think that's a big point here in the homeschooling debate is the first thing you hear when someone's trying to convince you not to homeschool is they'll say, well, the kid may learn a lot of math and reading and writing and they'll do great academically, but they won't have any socialization. But what you're talking about is negative forms of socialization.
Right,
and I went to public schools too. In middle school, we had people getting rolled into the gang, they would call it, an initiation tactic where if you got beat up in the bathroom, that meant you were a cool kid. You got to be part of the gang too. And that was rewarded socially as a good thing. We had drugs on campus. People were getting pregnant on campus. There was teenage sex going on. And so that's not something I want my young daughter to be around. And I'd say, you can have your socialization. And when I was in school, when we sat in the back of the class and we were passing notes and talking to each other, what did the teacher tell us? Stop socializing. Right. They don't want you to have any socialization. And it's all about obedience. It's to break creativity in the child. And it's so unnatural. We don't learn that way. It's not force-fed down our throat from one day to the next. If you and I want to learn something, we go watch a video. We talk to each other about it. We consult experts. And it's self-directed. It's based on our interest, because otherwise you're just going to memorize stuff, regurgitate it, put it out on a piece of paper, do a good job on the test. And I was good at that in public school. I had really good memory, and I could regurgitate information, but I don't remember a lot of the stuff we learned. I can look the stuff up again and refresh my memory, but I think the best way to learn is through natural interest. And I think our kids are doing that right now, even before they become school age, right? And if we had the government educating our kids from the time that they were born, the rest of society would tell us that kids wouldn't be able to walk unless we had the government educating them. But they do learn how to walk without the government. And so if you can kind of think about a different scenario where we didn't have government-run institutions for schooling, we'd probably be a lot better off.
Corey, you're super sharp. You're on point. We could talk to you all day. You're a fast man, and we talked about your relationship was fast. And this book popped out fast. What's next? What's next for you? What's popping off? We have to keep up with you.
I will be fighting this fight for a long time. I told you, we have a lot of momentum in recent years, but that was because for decades we were just having incremental reform. We'd pass a policy, but it would only be available for a few thousand kids. Now we're going from 0 to 100 real quick, but that's only in the red states. In the blue states that are dominated by teachers union control right now, where Democrats, they're basically listening to special interest over their actual constituents, that's going to be a tougher lift. And what I point out in the book, the most important chapter's chapter 4. It's called the Red State Strategy. And while it talks about in the short term, we're going to have more victories in red states, it theorizes about how we're going to make headway in the blue states. And the way that I think this is going to happen is not by making lefty arguments for school choice. You can do that all day. It's an equalizer. It allows for more equality of opportunity. It allows families to choose schools that are aligned with left-leaning values just as much as it allows families to choose schools with right-leaning values, or schools that don't even get involved in the values front at all. But the way that we're actually going to make headway in blue states is not by making people feel good about voting for the issue. It's about making them accountable at the ballot box. And we saw this happen in Virginia, not too far from you. In Virginia, in 2021, Terry McAuliffe, it looked like he was going to win the election for governor. Right before the election, this is in a blue state, it went 10 points to Biden apparently in 2020. And Terry McAuliffe was up in the polls by large numbers until the final debate. What did he say? He said, "I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach." It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it works out for him. It did not work out for him. He ended up losing. He flipped in the polls right after that. Glenn Youngkin, a Republican, won on the issue of education. That was the number 2 issue in the election. Basically never happens. Education is usually at the bottom of the list of voters' priorities. That was number 2, second to only the economy. And Glenn Youngkin won with the education voters by 6 points. That is a seismic shift towards Republicans on education. For people who don't live in Virginia, the American election in November, President Trump won on the issue of education too. There were 2 polls right before Election Day by Atlas Intel, the most accurate pollster from 2020, and they also correctly predicted him winning all the 7 swing states. This was the only poll that I saw that asked, who do you prefer on education? On both instances, they found that voters preferred Trump on education after he ran on the issues of school choice and abolishing the Department of Education over and over and over again. And this is a seismic shift because for decades, Democrats have had a double-digit advantage on education. This is because it used to be a conversation about who's going to throw more money at the problem, and it was always the Democrats that were doing that. But now the conversation has shifted to being about who's going to respect my right to direct the upbringing of my child. And I think Trump obviously won on that issue. He won the parent vote by 9 points, according to exit polling, and that was a 15-point shift to the right from 2020 alone. And so I think the more that this happens, the Democrats are going to have to say, you know what? We got to start listening to the kids union, the parents, not just the teachers union, and you'll have some defectors. They'll start to join the right side of history. And once enough of them move over to the side of parents, the teachers unions aren't going to be able to control them again. Because they can primary one or two Democrats that kind of come off the reservation, but if all of them band together and do the right thing for their constituents, the teachers unions are going to have to pivot. They're going to have to actually focus on, I don't know, benefits for teachers instead of controlling parents. So I think that's the path forward. I'm not done yet. We're winning a lot, but we have a long way to go. Every single blue state's on my list too.
Corey, you're the man for the job.
All right,
I mean, that's
yeah,
incredible.
I love this conversation, Corey. I appreciate you being here in Austin at the OWN headquarters with me and Kinz on That1 Podcast. Appreciate your time, man. Thank you.
Much.
Keep up the good work.
I just love the way this man's mind works. It's incredible. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.
All right, guys, go subscribe and be that one.